The 30th of January, 1933, Germany. Adolf Hitler, the leader of the Nazi Party, is appointed Chancellor of Germany and aims to lead the German master race to victory in the racial struggle against those deemed as inferior peoples, especially the Jews. In shaping and implementing many Nazi policies, the German medical profession plays a central role, and many doctors and nurses become involved in crimes of the regime. While some German physicians welcome the Nazi regime because it supports their beliefs about racial hygiene, others join to take advantage of opportunities to advance their careers. Among them are 200 German doctors who from 1942 begin to conduct painful and often deadly medical experiments on thousands of concentration camp prisoners without their permission. One doctor who was involved in these experiments is Alfred Trzebinski. Alfred Albrecht Josef Trzebinski was born on the 29th of August 1902 in the town of Utrosin, today's Poland, then part of the German Empire. His father came from a family of impoverished nobility from Greater Poland, a historic region in west-central Poland, where Polish-German marriages were relatively common. His parents were Catholics and raised their children primarily in German culture, although they maintained contact with their Polish relatives. Trzebinski decided to study medicine and completed his studies in May 1928 with a doctoral thesis on facial paralysis caused by syphilis. At that time, syphilis was a serious problem in Germany, and given the level of medical advancement at that time, it was difficult to effectively combat the disease. Trzebinski began his medical practice in Mühlberg on the Elbe, a picturesque medieval town 70 kilometers north of Dresden. He primarily treated residents of nearby villages, and was so popular among the locals that they called him a benefactor of humanity. Despite his reputation as a compassionate physician, Trzebinski's underlying beliefs aligned with a growing Nazi ideology. His commitment to this cause became evident in 1932 when he joined the SS. On the 30th of January 1933, Adolf Hitler was appointed Chancellor of Germany by President Paul von Hindenburg. On the very same day, Trzebinski married Käthe, a fellow student and member of the National Socialist Women's League, the female wing of the Nazi Party. However, the marriage was childless and ended in divorce after a few years. With his second wife, Leni, who he met in 1943, Alfred Trzebinski had a daughter. In February 1933, Trzebinski joined the Nazi Party, and by 1935, he had also become a member of the National Socialist German Doctors' League. The Second World War started on the 1st of September 1939, when Nazi Germany invaded Poland. Trzebinski was a member of the Waffen-SS, the military branch of the SS, but due to kidney stones, he was not sent to the front. Instead, in the spring of 1941, he was assigned to serve at Auschwitz concentration camp, located in German-occupied Poland. Trzebinski's assignment to Auschwitz marked the beginning of his involvement in one of the most notorious sites of human suffering during the Second World War. Auschwitz was not only a concentration camp, but also a place where painful and often deadly medical experiments were conducted on prisoners. These experiments aimed to push the boundaries of science with complete disregard for human life. One of the leading figures in these experiments was SS Dr. Josef Mengele, known as the Angel of Death. Mengele was notorious for his inhumane experiments, especially on twins, whom he used for brutal tests to study heredity. In many cases, these experiments involved unnecessary amputations, exposure to extreme temperatures, or the injection of harmful substances. Women were also victimized in large numbers, often subjected to sterilization experiments where doctors tried different methods to render them infertile, including the use of radiation. Others were exposed to infectious diseases like typhus and tuberculosis in attempts to test treatments or vaccines. Many died in the process, while others suffered long-term physical and psychological damage. By the end of the war, thousands had been tortured and killed without any real medical advancement. Considering the inhumane conditions, lack of consent, and questionable research standards, modern scientists overwhelmingly reject the use of results from experiments in the camps. At Auschwitz, Trzebinski officially held a position of camp doctor from July to November 1941. As was typical in extermination camps, his role was not primarily focused on medical treatment, which was carried out by selected prisoners. Instead, he was involved in selecting prisoners for labor or execution, assisting with punishments, and managing bureaucratic tasks. Trzebinski also participated in 2 experimental mass murders using poisonous gas. In July 1941, he witnessed the gassing of 575 Polish prisoners from Auschwitz at Sonnenstein Castle in Pirna in Germany. This was part of the Nazi regime's T4 program, which aimed to exterminate those deemed unworthy of life, such as individuals with physical and mental disabilities. Later, in September of the same year at Auschwitz, he observed alongside high-ranking SS officers such as Maximilian Grabner and Karl Fritsch the first execution using Zyklon B gas. This resulted in the deaths of around 850 Soviet prisoners of war and sick Polish prisoners. From October 1941, Trzebinski served at the Majdanek extermination camp, located near Lublin in German-occupied Poland. In April 1942, he became the chief doctor there, replacing Max Pauly, who had died of typhus. At Majdanek, Trzebinski participated in the selection of sick prisoners, including those weakened by typhus, and without hesitation sent many of them to their deaths. Trzebinski was then transferred to frontline service as a doctor, but contracted typhus himself, and his condition was further complicated by pneumonia and thrombosis. After initial treatment at the SS hospital in Lublin, he was sent to a hospital in Radebeul, Germany, for rehabilitation, where he remained until August 1943. After he recovered, Trzebinski was reassigned to Neuengamme concentration camp near Hamburg. During the war, more than 100,000 people passed through Neuengamme and its numerous subcamps, and almost half of them were murdered. When Trzebinski arrived at Neuengamme camp, Max Pauly, a fanatical Nazi commandant who had previously commanded Stutthof concentration camp, was in charge. Pauly ruled harshly, demanding violence and terror against prisoners. Alfred Trzebinski maintained a smooth relationship with Pauly, never resisting his authority and always following orders. At Neuengamme, Trzebinski fell into the grim routine of selecting prisoners for death and conducting quick medical rounds. After the war, a German prisoner recalled that Trzebinski was nicknamed the Lazy Pig because he barely paid attention to the sick and ignored the severe shortage of medicine. His only contribution was banning the pinning method, which involved injecting phenol into the heart to kill the sick. In the spring of 1944, Enno Lolling, the chief physician of all concentration camps, ordered one of Neuengamme's barracks to be set aside for Dr. Kurt Heissmeyer's secret medical experiments. Heissmeyer wanted to test how the body reacted to injections of tuberculosis bacilli and assess an antidote he developed. His experiments on about 30 Polish and Russian prisoners were largely unsuccessful, as most of them died. By the fall of 1944, Heissmeyer requested the transfer of Jewish children to serve as guinea pigs for his reckless theories. 20 Jewish children, aged 5 to 12, were brought to Neuengamme from Auschwitz at the end of November 1944. 10 boys and 10 girls from Auschwitz concentration camp were chosen by Josef Mengele, who asked the children, "Who wants to go and see their mother?" Most were from Poland, while others came from France, the Netherlands, Italy, and Slovakia. The children were accompanied to Neuengamme by 4 female prisoners. 3 of them, 2 Polish nurses and 1 Hungarian pharmacist, who also served as a nurse, were killed upon arrival at Neuengamme. The 4th woman, a Polish-born Jew named Paulina Trotsky, was a doctor. She survived the war and later gave testimony in Jerusalem about what she had witnessed. The transport was accompanied by an SS guard. There were 20 children, 1 female medical doctor, and 3 nurses. The transport was in a separate carriage that was coupled on a normal train. Presented in this manner, it appeared to be an ordinary carriage. We had to take off the Stars of David, lest we attract any attention. To prevent people from approaching us, they said it was a transport of people suffering from typhoid fever. The food was excellent. On that journey, we were given chocolate and milk. After a 2-day trip, we arrived at Neuengamme at 10 o'clock at night. They were housed in the same barracks where the adult prisoners had been kept. After initial examinations, they were infected with live tuberculosis bacilli. Their skin was cut, and their wounds were rubbed with sputum containing the bacteria. After some time, under Heissmeyer's supervision, their swollen glands were surgically removed from under their arms for examination. Each child underwent this painful procedure twice, and the children were also photographed holding up their arm to show the surgical incision. The ordeal of these fever-ridden, weakened, and lonely children lasted for months. After the war, when asked why he did not use guinea pigs, Dr. Kurt Heissmeyer responded, "For me, there was no basic difference between human beings and guinea pigs." He then corrected himself saying, "Jews and guinea pigs." Trzebinski, who was involved in these experiments, was also responsible for the ongoing medical treatment. By early spring 1945, it was clear that Germany had lost the war. The Nazis, in a rush to cover up their barbaric crimes, began destroying evidence. As part of this effort, the victims of Heissmeyer's experiments also had to disappear, and Alfred Trzebinski was appointed to carry out the order. This took place on the night of the 20th of April 1945 in the former school building at Bullenhuser Damm, which served as a subcamp of Neuengamme. Around midnight, a small postal truck pulled up in front of the building. First, 6 Russian prisoners were taken from the truck and led to the back of the school, where they were directed to a basement. Then, a group of 20 Jewish children followed in their footsteps. In the basement, all the children were crowded into one room along with Trzebinski. While the children, unaware of their fate, calmly chatted with each other, the Russians were quietly being killed in the neighboring rooms. One by one, they were hanged by ropes pulled over the heating pipes. The executions were carried out by SS men Ewald Jauch and Johann Fram. After a while, Fram entered the room where the children were and ordered them to undress. The terrified children looked questioningly at Trzebinski, who cynically reassured them that they were going to be vaccinated against typhus. During the trial after the war, Trzebinski recalled how he took Fram aside and quietly asked, so that the children wouldn't hear, "What will happen to them now?" Fram replied that he had to hang them. Trzebinski then proceeded to inject the children with large doses of morphine. He and Fram laid them on the floor under blankets. Most of them, tired and sedated, quickly fell asleep, while a few remained awake, quietly talking among themselves. Fram picked up a 12-year-old boy in his arms and said to the others, "Now I'm putting him to bed." He then took him to a room with a noose hanging from a hook, about 6 or 8 meters away from where the other children were. He placed the sleeping boy in the noose and pulled down on the child's body with all his strength, tightening the rope. After witnessing the death of the first child, Trzebinski felt sick and left the building, walking around it several times. Shortly afterward, Trzebinski left Bullenhuser Damm under the pretext of attending to formalities. Meanwhile, Fram continued the crime until all the Jewish children were hanged. Their 4 caretakers, 1 female medical doctor and 3 nurses, were also murdered that night. That same night, about 30 additional Soviet prisoners were also brought by lorry to the school to be executed. However, 6 escaped, 3 were shot trying to do so, and the rest were hanged in the basement. By the next morning, Trzebinski returned to the school to officially confirm the deaths of all the victims. He also ordered the burning of all the children's clothes, toys, and belongings to destroy any evidence. Shortly thereafter, Trzebinski returned to the camp at Neuengamme and reported to the commandant Max Pauly that the children had been killed. This crime, which became known as the Bullenhuser Damm massacre, had been ordered by SS Obergruppenführer Oswald Boll, the head administrator of the Nazi concentration camps, who ordered the Heissmeyer's department to be disbanded, and all children and caregivers to be murdered so that no witnesses to this crime would survive. After Germany's capitulation in May 1945, the murder of 20 children in the former school building at Bullenhuser Damm aroused public outrage and horror. Though Trzebinski went into hiding with his wife and daughter trying to escape his dark past, he was eventually tracked down. On the 2nd of February 1946, he was arrested and awaited trial for his role as part of the Neuengamme camp staff before the British military tribunal in Hamburg. During the trial, which began on the 18th of March 1946, Trzebinski claimed in his defense that he was just following orders. Regarding the murder of 20 Jewish children, Alfred Trzebinski said, "If I had acted as a hero, the children might have died a little later, but their fate could no longer be averted." He then added, "You cannot execute children, you can only murder them, but they were only Jews." Trzebinski confessed freely and frankly, and the court decided firmly and justly. On the 3rd of May 1946, a British military court in Hamburg sentenced Trzebinski to death by hanging. Alfred Trzebinski was 44 years old when on the 8th of October 1946, he was hanged by the British executioner Albert Pierpoint. His last words were, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." There were no tears shed for Alfred Trzebinski. Thanks for watching the World History Channel. Be sure to like and subscribe, and click the bell notification icon so you don't miss our next episodes. We thank you, and we'll see you next time on the channel.